Does your vision for business match what you see happening on a daily basis? Welcome to Jim White's Circle of Success show, where Jim White brings it all together. For over 30 years, Jim White has worked with organizations and individuals worldwide to help develop and implement excellence. You'll get the inside story on how to create innovative leaders from one corner of your company to the other. Get everyone on your team contributing to the bottom line. Keep building revenue, even when the economy and your customers have flatlined, and more. Jim White's Circle of Success show covers it all, from communication to contract negotiation, from personal fulfillment to revving up cash flow. It's not about theories, it's about showing what works and how to make it work for you. And now, here's your host, Jim White.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the show. Dave, thank you for that introduction. We have a fantastic show for you today, ladies and gentlemen. For my radio audience, you know that I've been doing a series for the past 18 months to 2 years on the highway surface bill, transportation, creating jobs, and that type of thing. And we have some very, very interesting stuff coming out of Washington. And about new legislation to do with the American Energy and Infrastructure Job Act. For the entire hour today, we're going to drill down, my favorite word, drill down on a bill known as H.R. 7. And to help us understand what it is and is not, we have two guests. She's going to be joining us via Skype. Our first guest is Kenyon Gleason, which is the Vice President for the American Road and Transportation Builders Association in Washington, D.C., and he's going to join us for a couple of segments and give us an update as to where the bill stands, exactly what it means, and give you a little history on the short-term extensions we've had and why this is such an important deal, because it is touted as a long-term solution, 5 years, and the chairman, John Mica, Congressman, Republican from Florida, chairs the committee, and he did an interview on the 31st that I want us to take a look at. And so it's about a 2-minute clip, and we'll take a look at that clip, and then we'll bring Kenyon live, and then we'll talk about exactly what the H.R. 7 is and how we're going to pay for it and all these good things. So let's watch the clip, and you're watching KYMB TV, Comcast Channel 19. So let's take a look at this clip, and we'll be right back with Kenyon after the clip.
Not only in Washington, but for the United States of America and for transportation. I'm Congressman John Mica. I have the honor and privilege of chairing the Transportation Committee. This is probably the most important piece of legislation that Congress will consider to put Americans to work and to also cut some of our reliance on imported energy and have a dramatic effect, I think, on creating jobs and allowing the consumer to have reasonably priced energy. So the bill is, first of all, a long-term bill. It's 5 years, and its value is estimated, the authorization is estimated at $260 billion. And that's very important. We've had some short-term expenditures. We're on our 8th extension of short-term transportation bills, but a long-term commitment to our states, to our local governments, and those that are actually building something. People who are building something out there need a reliable partner, and that's the federal government returning people's tax dollars. They pay it when they pay at the pump or wherever, and it goes into the trust fund or comes to Washington. And this is getting that money out there, building our nation's infrastructure and creating jobs. And also, again, the energy component is very important. This is the largest transportation reform bill since the creation of the interstate in 1956. contain. Do any of you have any idea how difficult it is to do a transportation bill without earmarks? This is the first one I know of. The last bill had 6,000.
We're back. Kenyon, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Jim. Appreciate being here.
You watched that clip, and I think you guys were probably at that press conference, right? Or one of your representatives.
Yes, I think we were.
Yeah, you were there representing us. First, just a little bit about your association so our viewers will understand exactly who you are and why they should be listening to us, tell them what's going on out of Washington. So just take 30 seconds or so, if you will, and tell us a little bit about the association, and then we'll drill down on what HR 7 is and is not.
Sounds good. Jim, the American Road and Transportation Builders Association is an advocacy organization based in Washington, D.C. We've got members all across the country in 35 state chapters that partner with us to put forward a plan for our nation's infrastructure. And we support and work on legislation that impacts them, from bills like H.R. 7 to other regulatory types of issues and other important things that impact contractors, design firms, equipment manufacturers, supply companies, public officials, anybody who's involved in the national transportation picture. So we try to be the voice of those folks. We've got roughly 5,500 members across the country.
That's great. And I tell you what, we thank you for what you guys do, because it takes that consistency up on the hill all the time to make sure that we are reminding the people that are there to serve who they actually work for, and it's us, right?
We try to do a good job of that.
And I know you do. So thank you, and thank you for joining us on the show today.
You bet.
H.R. 7. I know you could probably take weeks and weeks and weeks to discuss H.R. 7, but we have two segments today. So first, why is this so significant, this announcement that Congressman Micah was making on the 31st? Why was it so significant? And for our viewers, what's been happening for the past 26, 28 months in short term?
Yeah, we've got an interesting gridlock clock on our website. It's been 859 days since Safety Lou expired. And so, yeah, about 28 months. There have been 8 short-term extensions in the time period that the representative from Florida, our T&I chairman, mentioned. And so, you've got a lot of things that have happened in that time. Most importantly, I think, and one of the things that I think we probably gets forgotten about is just last summer, we were talking about approximately a 30 or a 35% cut in the program because highway revenues were not enough to sustain the types of investment that were coming out of the Highway Trust Fund. And so there was a lot of conversation last summer and into last fall about maybe even cutting the program. That would have been tremendously devastating, and states like California would have faced, dozens of tens of thousands of jobs lost in the state. You're talking about, the potential loss of about 45,000 jobs there in California and the loss of about $1.2 billion in federal funds had that been successful. Fortunately, folks like ARPA and the members who support us and other advocacy organizations in Washington put a stop to that. We were fortunate that they've sort of switched gears. We've gone now almost 180 degrees the other way and are now talking about roughly similar funding patterns to what we've had over the last few years, though this program that was pitched by Representative Micah and the House Republicans that has now passed through the committees and will be on the floor here within the next week or two, it does talk about, they say current levels, though current levels is a bit of a misnomer because current levels to us is $41.1 billion, which is what we had in 2011. I don't want to get into too many weeds here, but they did take a $2 billion cut into fiscal year 2012 and gave us about a 5% reduction in the federal program. And so they're talking about current levels that are based on those numbers. And those numbers, of course, are $2 billion short of what we believe current level funding should be and what the Senate is talking about in terms of current level funding.
I remember very vividly, as you laid out, Kenyon, about the proposed cuts back in the summer, right? 30 seconds or less. What was the course correction? I mean, what was the magic?
A lot of hard work and a lot of effort on behalf of folks who are members of associations like UCA in San Francisco,
right,
and the Southern California Contractors down in Los Angeles, and many other state chapter members across the country. Folks that went out there and spoke to their senators, spoke to their representatives, and said, look, what you're talking about here is tremendously devastating. The stimulus program helped us stay afloat. You kept us alive for a couple of years with stimulus dollars. That's about all you did. If you don't fix this, if you don't turn the direction here, you're talking about hundreds of thousands of jobs across the country being cut. And so I think really just an effort, a grassroots effort of people picking up the phone and calling their legislators and telling them they weren't going to stand for it.
Mm-hmm. And I'm glad to hear that, because that's one thing that we encourage. We have a radio show that we do every Saturday morning, and plus our television show, and we're out there and said we do have a voice. And sometimes we do not believe we have a voice, but we just got to be out there consistently because, I mean, this is a big deal. I mean, the infrastructure needs, not only in the United States from the surface transportation, as we know, is a huge need. There's not a better way to put people to work than in order to get that plan underway. And I was encouraged listening to Representative Mike when he said it's the biggest thing since 1956. And for our viewers, 1956 was when the President Eisenhower, is actually when they got the interstate system started, if you will. So it's going to move through. It's moved through the committees. It's in Congress. It's going to move. What do we see from the Senate side? I mean, I'm asking you to look at a crystal ball here a little bit. So what do we see? And what a lot of our contractors that are watching the show today. And at the bottom of the hour, we got a Mike Ghilotti with the president of Ghilotti Brothers up in Marin County is going to be joining us, and we're going to be talking about it from an operator standpoint and what impacts it would have, especially when we're talking about reducing the bureaucracy, where the typical time span of getting a project approved is about 15 years, and how we're going to reduce that and what's that going to mean to the contractor. So I said a whole lot there at one time, didn't I?
That's okay. There's a whole lot to talk about.
I know. We got a short period of time to get it in. So I tell you, the funding is always going to be the issue. And off the air, we were talking about that a little bit. Can we pick up on the funding? I mean, where's the money going to come from? Because we know that the fund, the highway the taxes that's paid into the trust fund, we've been taking the general fund's been subsidizing that for some time. So where's this $260 billion going to come from? And we're going to see it anytime soon.
Right. Well, listen, to sort of go back, you had asked originally a little bit about what's the Senate plan.
Right.
And if I could just really
Sure.
quickly contrast the House versus the Senate, and then I'd be glad to talk about the funding aspect.
Okay,
In
please.
the House side, you've got a 5-year proposal at $260 billion. 5-year proposal is a good thing because you're talking about the ability for states, for municipalities, for everyone to really put in place a plan that they can follow, something that they can look to, that they know they've got guaranteed revenues to be able to use for these projects. They can get the design work done on some big projects and move forward and count on it. You can't do that in the short-term environment that we've been working on under the last couple of years. So the House has got a 5-year proposal. The Senate, on the flip side, their proposal is a 2-year proposal, and that proposal will come to the floor likely this week. In fact, Senator Reid has indicated that they may bring that to the floor as soon as this week. It passed the EPW committee, which Senator Boxer leads there, and that bill would actually be a 2-year proposal at a little bit higher revenues than current revenues. And when I say current revenues, I mean current revenues as we define them, meaning $41.1 billion. They're actually talking about putting an inflationary index on there and bringing that level of investment up just a hair under that 2-year proposal. So while the 2 years is not ideal, because we would like to see a longer-term bill, the financing, at least in that bill, is a little bit higher than what you're seeing on the House side of things. And so you've got two really different proposals in terms of the financing picture. There's a lot of similarities and policy issues in both of those bills. They do a lot of streamlining that you indicated, Jim, and so I think there's a lot of positive things that will come out of either one of those proposals. But as far as the financing and the length of time that those bills will be in place, that's really the difference. And those are some major issues that are going to have to be sorted out in conference committee. And if things move forward as it looks like they will, with the Senate taking the bill up on the floor this week and possibly the House taking their bill up on the floor next week, we should get to conference committee hopefully here by late February or into March, and then the real work sort of begins where they have to sort out these really nitpicky, if you will, issues and try to define maybe the specifics in terms of the timing and then, of course, try to define the financing part of that.
One thing that you're going to find on live television, just for behind the scenes here, time flies. It absolutely flies, and I appreciate, even though we got 2 segments and they're 10-minute segments, they're going to get by, so we got a lot to get in. And like I said, we have Mike Ghilotti, which is going to join us at 1:26 after you get through. Then we'll talk to Mike about from his perspective. But what we got to do now, we got to get a quick break in. And we'll come back after the break and we'll continue the discussion. You're watching KYMB TV, Comcast Channel 19. We'll be right back after this break.
This segment is brought to you by 12 O'Clock High Leadership and Management Summit. 12 O'Clock High is one of the undisputed best movie classics of all time. It is also one of the best business learning tools available. The movie rated #1 by top executives for its influence on their management styles. Now, the inspiration of the 12 O'Clock High Leadership and Management Summit, an innovative one-day event and 30-day follow-up where you will quickly see what's working and not working on the front lines of your company and in your own leadership style. Learn more at 12high.com. That's 12high.com.
Thank you so much. We're back with Kenyon Gleason. Funding aspect. And we'll get you back on the screen here. Here you go. There you go. You're back and back. Technology is a wonderful thing.
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Glad to be with you. Thank you.
You're my pleasure. 2 years from the Senate side. What's that all about? I know. What's up with that?
Well, interestingly, the Senate bill was the one that was moving forward most rapidly for the longest period of time, and it's actually a very bipartisan bill.
Okay.
You got folks in the EPW, some of the staunchest Republicans and some of the staunchest Democrats coming together on that package, and that really is a bipartisan effort, and there's really a lot of positive things in there for transportation and design construction across the country. So,
And
while it's not long enough, I think they really just wanted to try to keep things moving forward.
And I agree with that. I think that's based on our following the act. I think that's good. So all in all, this is a good thing. What we're hearing, right?
What's happening right now in Washington is a good thing, but very much so. There's a lot of things in either of those bills that we personally might not agree with, or other associations might not agree with, that are the best for the industry. But ultimately, what is happening, the process that's taking place right now with the bills coming forward, is a good thing, and we hope to get some resolution to this here very shortly, because there are a lot of jobs at stake. There are a lot of people's livelihoods at stake. There are a lot of contractors, design firms, other companies that are really hurting and need the consistency that comes from a national transportation bill.
No, I couldn't agree with you more. And it's once again, your crystal ball. Can we actually see an effect of that this year, 2012?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, no question. Because once you get the bill passed and it's basically, moved into law and signed by the president, now all of a sudden you see people opening up their checkbook saying, I need to invest. I need to build my company to be able to handle what I expect will come my way in terms of jobs moving forward. And a lot of people have just been sitting real tight for the last few years, and have been trying to borrow from Peter to pay Paul, and you've seen margins very, very tight on multiple projects, and so now this will really help to open that up and help to get the economy moving forward.
What are some of the things that the different associations, especially the contractors, is there something that our viewers could be doing to continue to support these efforts? What recommendations do you have there? Can you
pick up the phone and call. California's got 6 representatives as members of the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, and then, of course, you've got multiple other members of Congress. So pick up the phone and give them a call. Tell them that they need to vote to move this thing forward. It's become a very partisan issue, unfortunately. The transportation bill's never been very partisan, but we do need to get this thing moving forward in both the House and the Senate so we can get to that conference committee. And in order to do that, we really need these people to vote to make it happen. So pick up the phone, call your representatives, call your senators, and urge them to move this forward as quickly as possible.
Your website tonight, I know we have our local, like you said, Northern California, San Francisco, the EUCA, and in Southern California, our brothers down there. And I know there's these different websites that has links to make it easy for our viewers to be able to communicate with their representatives. And I'm assuming you have the same for your website?
Absolutely, we do. We've got a page where you can go and get access to the phone number, the email, all of those things, background on the issue, so you can put together a short little note and send it off to them. And trust me, the folks in these offices do listen. They take scorecards based on how many people are calling, and it's very important that we as an industry move that message forward so that they know that they're hearing from their constituents about this.
I couldn't agree with you more, and that's one of the missions, not only of our television show, but our radio show, is just to just stay out there in front of it. And in our shows, we don't take any side. I don't care where you're Republican or Democrat. We're all Americans that's trying to create jobs, and so that's the position that we take on the show. But we do everything we can to be able to keep the awareness, and especially people watching the show. And actually, our show is streaming live to over 200 countries, so we have an influence there as well. Other parts of the country that can learn from what we're doing as well. So I appreciate all the efforts that you guys are doing. No earmarks. What is an earmark?
Well, the earmarks are when a congressman or a senator would basically go ahead and say, I've got $2 million I need for this project, or $200 million I need for that project, and they'd work it out with their colleagues to put that into the bill. This bill does not have any of those, and there's been a very anti-earmark climate in Washington now for the past couple of years. And as such, that does change a little bit in terms of the way this bill and the funding for this bill will come out. There's a state formula that's used to send the monies, the federal transportation, the gas tax monies, back to states. Mm-hmm. And, of course, now with no earmarks, that will change the complexion of how much states get, and that is all yet to be determined. There's not a lot of specifics available yet in terms of who's going to get what and how much, but it will change the picture because many states were very, very good at, in the past, getting earmarks, and now without that as part of the federal program, it definitely is going to change the picture in terms of who gets what.
I think it was 6,000 or so that was removed. I think Representative Michael was talking about that in his interview. All these interviews. I'm going to throw up, and it's kind of a little thing here, and I know we can't see this well, and I'm not trying to make it a good. Well, maybe we have such great Dave and Chip. You see what we're looking at here. In its surface transportation programs and bureaucracy. Man, there's just hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of these different departments. How are we going to get agreement to these things when we talk about streamlining? I mean, I know I'm asking tough questions that probably going to be talking about for the next 30, 40, 100 years, but surface transportation consolidation and reform. I mean, how's this going to happen?
Yeah, there are a lot of, well, the bills are very lengthy, obviously, because they deal with many of those issues. But each of the bills, the House bill and the Senate bill, tackle many of those challenges, and uniquely, many of the policy recommendations coming from both the House and the Senate are very similar. Mm-hmm. And so I think, there's been a lot of progress on that and a lot of discussion taking place over the past number of years on that consolidation effort. And so I think you'll see some coming together in terms of that policy initiative. Really, the major differences in these bills right now, as I've indicated, is, again, just that length of time and the financing capacity of these bills. So the Senate thinks they've found the money to be able to cover the gap in terms of what isn't available in the highway trust as you indicated, there were some transfers from the general fund that were put in there to help cover us until about the end of this year, roughly early 2013. And once we get to that point, if we don't have a bill, it's going to be ugly, and there's some potential large cuts that could come. So I think that too has pushed forward folks to make this happen. So a lot of those details will get sorted out, and then once we get the financing picture figured out here in the coming weeks, I think we're moving in the right direction, and there's definitely good reason for optimism.
I tell you, and boy, you make a great point there. I mean, March is, we're just right around the corner here for, we got to make something happen or we're into this whole cycle again, right?
Absolutely. If you get into the presidential election, that really challenges things too.
Now, the politicians say that's not going to affect anything, right? But anyway, that's another show. Another
we could go on about that for a while, I think.
Okay. I tell you, you're wonderful. I'd like to have you back as we follow this. And actually, I'd like to dedicate about an hour to this subject if we could get our calendars together.
Sure.
To do this, I think it's important. So we'll communicate on that, and website that people can go to before we have to say goodbye to you. And
it's artba.org. Encourage folks to go there, check it out. Appreciate you having us on, Jim. There's a lot of stuff, as you said, and we, of course, have got a ton of information on there. But, again, folks, pick up the phone, call your representatives, your senators, encourage them to keep moving on this. We're right there. We're on the precipice, and we need your help to kind of push the ball over the end zone here. So
you're a gentleman. Thank you for being on the show today, and we'll be in touch, and we'll try to get our calendars together soon for more.
Thank you so much for having me.
My pleasure. Have a great day.
All right, take care.
Our guest is Kenyon Gleason. I tell you what a great job that organization does, and others. And we got to get this break in. When we come back, we're going to be back live with Mike Ghilotti, which is the president of Ghilotti Brothers, and we're going to talk about HR 7 in California from an operator's perspective. So you're watching KYMB TV, Comcast Channel 19, and we will be right back after this message.
This does not have one. It consolidates or eliminates 70 federal programs. We started out with just a half a dozen in transportation. We've got over 100 and some. This consolidates and eliminates some that are duplicative. It eliminates mandates that the state spend highway funding on non-highway activities. Very important. Again, we're going to get the maximum amount of money in our real infrastructure, and people will hopefully see the difference. Allows states to set their own priorities. This is great flexibility for the states and others who are doing these projects. On funding, again, 5 years, $260 billion. The revenue.
Mike, welcome to the show, Mr. Mike Ghilotti. Thank you so much. We got great audio, and I tell you what, in preparation, if you could just sit back a little bit, we'd get you better on the screen, and we're good. So good to see you.
Good to see you as well. Happy New Year.
You as well. I'm assuming you catch some of this conversation with Kenyon Gleason from the American Road and Transportation Builders Association, talk about HR 7. And I tell you, Ghilotti Brothers, coming up on 100 years, right?
Absolutely.
And as such, in 100 years, you guys have a lot of experience. And if we could, Mike, based on this new discussion in Congress, HR 7, from an operator standpoint, how do you see this? I mean, Kenyon said if we can get this thing to Senate and get the president to sign it, and for his projects ready to go, how would this affect you, for example? How would this affect the industry, if you will? Question making sense to you?
Yeah, it is. Jim, I think the challenge is going to be the first stimulus act is all based on the expediency getting the so they set the structure up.
Mike, we're having a little audio on your audio side, and this is viewers realize it's live television, so we have I'm going to give you an in-studio number, please.
Okay.
And 831, if you could write that down and ask your people to call the studio, and we'll patch you in this way because what you've got to say is so important, and we don't want people to miss a word of it. So if you could call 831-375-1919, and we'll continue the interview that way if we can, please. Do that.
Okay.
Meantime, we'll continue, and that's the beauty part about live television. We can dance, and we're okay. But your perspective is so important, and I really appreciate you taking your time on a Monday, middle of the week, to be able to share your views on this topic. So, I'm assuming your people's creating a line there. While we're doing that, the streamlining portion. Hello.
Hi, how are you?
I'm okay. We'll get sorts of situated here.
Yeah.
We good?
Right.
Okay. Okay. All right. We got good audio here. Got Mike. Okay, Mike, we're good. One thing about our viewers, they understand, they love us, so they forgive us for this live hiccups. But this is what makes it so interesting. So, if we can get this bill to the street, how would it affect our Northern California contractors this year?
I don't think it's going to affect them at all this year, unfortunately. I think the problem is they're caught between trying to put a stimulus package together the last time that was too quick, and 70% of the cost went to materials because basically all you could do is overlays. We've talked about that in the past.
Right.
And now they want to do the right thing, which is a long-term strategy investment. That means it's going to take time. So, realistically, putting money into the system is the best thing in the world, but the reality is we're probably not going to see anything until next year.
Well, and before we had the audio, you were going to talk about the previous stimulus package, which we got several hundreds of millions and billions of dollars still sitting there because we haven't been able to get that to work either, right? And that's what you're saying.
Yeah.
I mean, what we have coming forth, being able to sit out of Congress, and this is once again the reason I wanted to have you on the show. You're the straight shooter that I know in the industry, and this is the reality check. And I was like, okay, we got to stay after Congress. We got to stay on the Senate. We got to move this stuff forward. But realistically, if you're looking to get a job today, I'm talking about a contractor perspective, and to be able to help put food on the table, probably not going to help you do it in 2012 based on what we're hearing.
No, unfortunately. And, the federal highways, these institutions, they're not geared for doing things expeditiously.
Right.
Now, unfortunately, I read a lot of the federal authorization bill. They're talking about the right things. They're finally talking about streamlining, reducing regulations, reducing bureaucracy. All these things are designed in this bill to improve and turn things around. But the reality is, if you're in the federal highways program, it's 8 to 12 to 15 years to start to finish on a project. And, even with the money coming through on this, it'll help, but it's not going to help this year.
Oh, let's pick up on this reduction of time, Mike. Like I said, it's 15 years or so from a concept to actually getting it started. In the current legislation, how are we going to get all these people together to say how can we reduce 10 years off this process? Is that possible?
I think it's possible. We've got to change the whole culture of doing business. We've heard a lot lately about what China is doing, and I had some friends come back recently and say, why can't we do what they're doing? They've got people working 24 hours a day, round the clock. They're putting in highways and bridges overnight. Well, we're not geared that way. Construction with the federal government doesn't look at doing business that way. Could we do business that way? We could do a lot better than we can. I'd be really, really encouraged by finding a way to have the federal government empower projects and empower the state to go and do work instead of their normal culture, which is to use their regulations and bureaucracy to slow things down. They want to be the watchdog. That's their role in life. And they get used to having layers of government. If all of a sudden all this work was expedited and efficient, they start getting worried about job security. But the reality is, if we want job security, we need to get the guys in the field with job security, not the bureaucrats. So that's, I think, could be done, but that's a tough one.
It is a tough one. But, again, what I enjoy is put the bear in the elephant, so to speak, in the closet to bring it out and talk about these real issues. And I wonder, in any of these bills, who's having, or have you been invited, for example, to sit down and talk about, from an operator standpoint, what needs to go in these bills in order to be able to do exactly what you're saying?
I haven't been invited. I met with a Congressman, Mike Thompson, from the Northern California area recently, and we talked about job creation, job stimulus a little bit. But I think that would be a healthy process to get that input. One of the challenges, Jim, I think is out there is, of course, environmental. And in California, we have this AB 32, I think is.
Yep. Yep.
And, you go through all the steps now. You go through all the environmental review. You do your environmental impact report. These things can last for years. You're hiring hundreds of consultants. You're spending millions of dollars. And then you can do all that, and you can check the box and say, we're done. Let's build this now, and guess what you get? You get a lawsuit. I mean, if we're going to go through all that, let's say that you can't sue somebody at the end when he says, I've done everything you asked me to do, and I'm good to go. Or else these guys will just start saving the money and say, I'm just going to put it towards lawyers and fight the lawsuit because it's going to happen anyways.
Yeah.
So that's just a little example. But I know Caltrans in California, 2-3 years for an environmental impact report. They've got to worry about what their widening of a freeway is going to do to the ocean level, the sea level.
Right.
But that's part of their requirement. And since when did building a highway, you have to worry about the effects of the sea level and all that? That's part of the world we live in now.
Right. Mike, it is so critical because, once again, bring it from the street level, from operators. I mean, when we get through this interview, you're probably looking at a project. You out there, you guys are doing it. And this is the reality and check that I think that we've got to have. And I really love it that we have the press conferences and announcing these bills. We're going in the right direction. But once again, I don't know where you saw it when I held up this huge bureaucracy and how we're going to be able to cut that down and anytime soon to be able to make effect. And as a result, entrepreneurs and contractors such as that, you just kind of get beat down and you say, God, I think we should be getting support, but we're getting a whole bunch of rhetoric. And that's where I'm sensing the frustration is from the field level. Is that an accurate view?
Well, it is accurate, and I'll tell you, Jim, I love the new year because I love the process of putting a year in perspective, looking at what went well and what didn't, and where are opportunities for the new year. And, I look at 2011 and I say, that's another ho-hum year. Here's 2012. Can we make this year a better year? I think that in talking with a lot of my fellow contractors that they are pretty well beat down. I mean, we've survived 2 or 3 tough years. I wouldn't be surprised if this isn't the year that people finally say, I'm done bidding jobs for nothing, going out and breaking my back, and so on and so forth, and start putting money in bids and saying it falls where it is.
Yeah.
Been a lot of consolidation, and there's only the tough guys left. But back to your part about the streamlining, we have to in our business. We have to be efficient and effective. or we die.
Well, and that's the whole thing, and you and I have talked about this in the past, and that's what you contractors do extremely well, because that's just the nature of the business. Risk analysis,
Right.
and you got to do it better every day.
Correct.
And we continue in my level of frustration, if you will, and from a television, I probably shouldn't show that, but there is this level where we're watching our contractors. We need to put people to work, but yet it seems like we got such a disconnect. How do we go about doing this? And we're not bringing people like you in the room and say, how do we do it?
Correct.
And this is what we've got to encourage, and this is where I get myself in trouble, Mike. Going out there and say, hey, we got to do this stuff.
Right.
To do it. What else, because we got a lot of your colleagues I know is watching the show today, and thanks to your friends at the EUCA, and what else can we say to our folks that are maybe thinking about they're not going to make it in 2012? I mean, what do they do? Where do they go?
Well, I think it's an important process, to reflect and to take stock in what you've done and how you strategize again for the next year. And as contractors, we're not that good in long-term planning. We're worried about tomorrow. We're worried about what crews we're putting in the road and whether we're going to make budget and stuff like that. But I've found it extremely fortuitous, and I think I encourage all companies, whether you're in construction or not, to go through that process. Look at what's in front of us right now, but look at what's coming up down the road. In California, we're extremely challenged. We've got a program that was voted in 2004, this Prop 1B, and the $19 billion. That sunsets in 2012. There is no additional funding mechanism in place after that. So here's a program that is doing about $10 billion a year in Caltrans that's going to lose, 60-70% of its funding. I don't know what the exact number is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're right. Right.
So where do you go as a contractor next? We know the private work is gone. It's starting to really creep slowly along. We're seeing a little bit more of that. So 6, 8, 10 months, maybe there's going to be a little bit more activity. But you got to look at where your other options are, where your other alternatives are, and how do you differentiate yourself as a company from your competitors?
Yeah, absolutely. Mike, we got to get in a quick break, and if you could hang tight, we'll come back and maybe talk about some of the California budgets a little bit. How's that?
Sounds good.
You're watching KYMB TV, Comcast Channel 19. We'll be right back after this message.
Business is constantly changing. The challenges of the 21st century have never been greater. There is competition in every field, and technology is more fluid than ever. Bold, innovative thinking is needed. Organizations and individuals are looking for leadership, opportunity, and a way to grow. That way is finally here.
I love teaching. I love sharing. I love sharing from the heart, connecting when I call it the heart to the head.
Hundreds of companies and thousands of people have been inspired by one man.
Even from nothing you can accomplish if you have the will, if you have the perseverance, if you will work hard on setting goals and achieving those goals and holding yourself accountable to each and every one of those goals.
Jim White has dedicated his life to inspiring excellence in people.
A+. The man was knowledgeable. He had lived everything he talked about. He was extremely sincere. He was succinct, and he was inspirational.
He's given me some thought and some ideas on how to reset my goals and how to restructure my life.
A hugely successful businessman himself, Jim decided years ago to share his knowledge. Over the past 30 years, Jim White has mentored everyone from Fortune 500 CEOs to small business owners. He has helped numerous companies and individuals achieve their financial and personal goals. His circle of success is a blueprint for excellence and achievement.
I got the strong feeling that Mr. White was speaking from a huge amount of experience built up over the decades, which I think adds a lot of dimension to this kind of a seminar.
Wants to make you get up and do something tomorrow about changing your life.
J.L. White International is a management consulting and leadership development organization. Through workshops and one-to-one training, Jim and his staff have inspired audiences all over the country and have been able to achieve remarkable results by focusing on human capital and designing customized solutions to increase revenue and productivity. J.L. White International is guaranteed to inspire excellence. Isn't it time you discovered what true excellence in business is really like?
We're back with Mike Ghilotti. Mike is the president of Ghilotti Brothers, and like I said, they are coming up on 100 years of continuous operation in Northern California. And in my mind, there's no better person to be reviewing what I call the reality of these programs, because once again, what we are attempting to do, all of us in the industry, and what our show's mission is to inspire and to educate, is to get people to get out and take action, because we've got to cut down on some of the rhetoric coming out of Washington, streamlining the process in a real time, so we can make a difference, and especially in California, and get us back on the leadership position that we once enjoyed. Mike, welcome back.
Thank you.
I tell you what I don't know what you did, but you got a great video, great reception this time. So this is great.
It's tough with Italians. You never know what.
He's got a sense of humor as well. I love it. California budget. What's the effect of these redevelopment agencies in the contractor world? What's that mean? Governor Brown cutting all those redevelopment agencies. Does that affect you guys much? You don't get in that type of business, or?
Absolutely. No, it's just another chink in the armor. It's just getting so demoralizing. But, Jim, before we leave the last topic,
okay.
I just realized, one thing we were talking about, contractors, what do they do this, year? And, and in conjunction with your comments about the federal process and this, voting and what have you, we're not really good as an industry in unifying and having one voice. And worse than that, we're so busy with our day jobs, we don't have the ability to reach out and really be active. And so it was an interesting thought while we were on break that, one of the things we have to do as contractors is take opportunities to be a part of an association or an industry outreach group, and be active. We've got to be more supportive of our own efforts because nobody else will, and it's the best value that we can engage in, is for our time.
Well, I know you're very active in the what's referred to in Northern California, right? Is the EUCA?
Well, that's correct. And actually, we just completed a merger effective March 1st that's going to change to United Contractors and takes an association that my father and several founders created, Association of Engineering Construction Employers, and merged that with EUCA. So there's new developments in that arena, but again, that's this continued effort to get political. We don't think of construction companies and construction people as being political or wanting to be political, but unfortunately that's the world we live in. So
I agree, and the big significance of this merger is, once again, massive in numbers, duplication of efforts, or just what's the advantage of the merger?
The advantage is that it brings two like-minded entities and associations together, so that helps in numbers, it helps in the magnitude of the people it's representing. I think more importantly, it signifies a new era in the association and in the industry of people coming together and want to do what's best for the industry. A lot of what we do is centered around contract labor negotiations with the unions, but that is a part of it, as well as the effort to get more involved in the government relations side of doing business. So those are both strong missions for the new association, and it's an effort to, especially with the unions, the pension.
Exactly.
I mean, if we get into that, you and I will be spending another 20 minutes.
And
unfunded pension liability, health and welfare, all this stuff that there are employees too. We need to be a partnership, and as I say a lot of times, we're like a divorced couple.
Yeah.
The time we get together to talk is when we have to bargain a new contract. We should be talking all the time.
And I couldn't agree with you more. And I've extended an invitation just for for some labor to have some of these discussions. And this is a open invitation again. I'd love to have you on the show. I'd love to be able to debate these things, because you're right. We've got to work together. And this unfunded liability, I mean, this is a big deal. And that's going to put contractors and some of the vendors totally out of business if we don't find a way to deal with that, right?
That's correct. And what's worse is a lot of contractors don't know these new accounting procedures and regulations are actually going to require those numbers to be on your financial statements.
Ooh.
So now when you go and sit down with your banks and your bonding companies,
exactly.
Well, you're going to look at a line item in there and say, what the heck is this? And it's going to be a significant number. Companies don't realize what those responsibilities are until, unfortunately, you go out of business. But it's going to be on your financials now, so that's a whole other world. But
when does that come into effect? Is that in effect now, Mike?
It is. They backed off of there was some more significant legislation or regulations they were going to do, but in my understanding, in the 2012, fiscal year, you're going to be seeing that on your financial statements, and so I think that's a challenge. But just because I have a tendency to go every different direction, I'll try to help you stay on course. The regulations and the not necessarily regulations. I'm sorry, with the redevelopment money we were talking about.
Right.
Just staggering, devastating to all these cities and counties that don't have any revenue source anyways, and we're relying on this redevelopment money to take care of projects that otherwise will go back on to the drawing board. And talked to a couple of administrators and said absolutely crushed them. They have no recovery plan. They're dead in the water for another 2 or 3 years now.
And that's something that I believe as an industry, and I know that's something that we're going to continue to put some light on from our show, is to let people understand how significant that is. I mean, that is a big deal, and there's also lies an opportunity, is there not, from a private sector, if there's opportunity lies there as well, picking up some of these projects?
Well, I think the opportunity you might be referring to is a public-private partnership, something along those lines.
Right. And I remember having a discussion with you over that about a year ago.
Yeah. That's a part of this bill that they're trying to do with the long-term Federal Highways Act. But I think it's challenging. I think it might be out there. They're doing it with schools. They're doing it of lease back now.
Right.
So they're finding a mechanism that allows them to structure a contract in a way where the financing is done over time. Construction is probably a little new to that, so we're gonna have to work on that one. But there's always opportunities. I mean, we're the eternal optimists in construction. If you throw us a curveball, we're going to try to figure out another way of accomplishing the target. But it's just like what I was reading in the paperwork there. At the end of the day, there's no substitute for cold, hard cash.
Right. I agree.
We have a bad system. We haven't done anything with this, gas tax. 90-some, 92, 93. It's still at 90.
Exactly. Right.
The Highway Trust Fund is going upside down. We don't want to invest in a long-term infrastructure program. We just got to make some cold, hard decisions. We're going to get left behind. I'm going to be sitting here looking at us laughing because we have the ability, we have the capacity. We just haven't come together and figured out the solution.
I couldn't agree with you more. As you were talking, I was reminded of a colleague of yours, Dan Hemmick.
Yes.
I remember talking to Dan, and I remember in the San Francisco Bay Area some time ago when that 580, when that truck and Dan got the contract to redo that bridge there, 580.
Right.
And I remember Dan saying, we came together, and I think the project was like 14 days or something of that nature. That
within a month they got the
within a month.
Yeah.
And I said, geez, I don't know. Call me silly if you want. But if you can do this in a month, and did you, one, compromise any quality? No.
Yeah.
Did you once compromise any ecology? No. So why can't we do this every day versus having to have the crisis in order for us to respond to? So the point of it is we can do these things, right? That's the point I'm making.
Exactly. And that circles back to our discussion earlier. Wouldn't it be refreshing if the regulatory agencies, the governmental agencies actually empowered you to do it?
Right.
Assisted you in expediting and building stuff in 30 days and repairing things. They have a vested interest because there's 300,000 cars that go through there every day.
Right.
So, yeah, all of a sudden now we want to expedite. We'll work with you. We'll make this easier. We'll expedite approvals.
Yeah.
Yeah. But then, the day after you go back to the snail approach. But
business as usual after that's over with. But that one stuck with me, and I know that's something that you've said. I know that's something that you believe in to your core. And we're out of time. The hour just goes, and I'd love to have you back, and especially if I want to get some labor involved in this thing to bring some light to this unfunded liability issue as well. Would you be open to that in the future?
Oh, absolutely. It's such an important part of that partnership, labor and industry working together, because as a lot of your listeners know, the private work for the non-union is a big competitive disadvantage, and we've got to close that gap. So, having that discussion on how to team up with labor would be welcome.
Very good, sir. Mike, it's always a pleasure. Thank you for your time, and thank you for your insights. It's refreshing, and you guys have a great week, and we'll be in touch.
Thank you, Jim.
My pleasure. We got to get another break in, and we come back. We'll wrap up for today, and we'll talk about next week's show. So you're watching KYMB TV, Comcast Channel 19.
This segment is brought to you by Circle of Success, a dynamic, year-long intensive management and leadership development process designed to help individuals and organizations reach their goals quickly. A customized process addressing specific needs and identifying the critical opportunities particular to the individual and organization, with results measured in increased revenue, increased net profits, and increased equity. The Circle of Success, inspiring excellence in people. At jlwhiteinternational.com/circles.
We're back, and we're up against the hour, ladies and gentlemen. I want to thank my two guests, Kenyon Gleason from the American Road and Transportation Builders Association in Washington, D.C., for being our guest today. I want to thank Mike Ghilotti from his insights from an operator's, contractor's perspective. And we'll be back next Monday, same time, 1 p.m. Pacific. Until then, make it a great week.
This has been Jim White's Circle of Success Show. Please visit our website, jlwcos.tv. Join us next time as Jim White brings it all together. on Jim White's Circle of Success.